Hey, I'm Hendo, and I spent over 200 hours making this super detailed and delightfully sponsored cosplay of Hackclaw's new Inky Reflections skin from the game Delta Force. If you've ever wondered how a cosplayer actually earns an income from this crazy little hobby, this is the vid for you because I'm going to walk you through what's definitely one of my favorite collaborations so far. And that's despite the fact that I had to make this in about a month in 3 different countries and 5 different locations, but it's not my fault. I'm going to discuss the whole process mixed in with some info about this super rad game, and at the end I'll tell you exactly how many hours and dollars I spent bringing this character to life. Okay, let's get into it. Oh, also knife throwing. Delta Force reached out to me via an ad agency, which is usually the case when I work with gaming companies based in Asia. They linked me to this super cool character trailer that immediately had my interest because look how cool! From first contact to negotiations to signing the contract was only about 8 days, which is super fast in this industry, at least in my experience. And that was perfect because I expected this collaboration to take about 32 days to meet my deadline of early March, so no time to waste. And this timeline was going to be a nightmare because I was in Spain at the time, then would be in Norway for 2 weeks, then would be flying out to LA for an already planned trip to see friends. Fortunately, I was only in Madrid for another couple days, so it worked out to spend that time sourcing materials and making digital patterns by tracing some reference images. I also meticulously planned every day of work. That is seriously the only way I was going to do this build in time. Organization is key. I spent about 12 hours total on planning, buying materials, and mostly patterning. As soon as I touched down in Norway, it was time to gather some supplies, starting with self-made, which is basically Norwegian Joanne's. Rest in peace, Joanne's. My plan is to do all of the sewing here in Norway and then work on the props and weapons in LA, since transporting those would probably be a pain anyway. Here's my material so far, like 2/3 of this I think I already had. I've spent about $300 up to this point, and a frustrating amount of that was just on printer ink. I also went to like 5 different thrift stores in my area, but the only useful thing I could find was this crop jacket that I decided to harvest for my modern cheapo top, or whatever this thing is called. I spend so much time just trying to Google what stuff is called. Whenever I have a paid commission, I do a mock-up of almost everything to make sure I get it right. This top also has this like pattern to it, so I needed a mock-up so that I could cut the pattern and paint those pieces before sewing it together. I got this silicone dog brush thing in this truly random store in Spain, and it saved me a lot of time with the dotted part of the pattern. I'm not going to show you this build exactly in chronological order because all the jumping around would probably give you whiplash, so I'm more or less going to focus on one thing at a time. Okay, so sewed this samfu or cheapo top together, whatever you want to call it, and it had so many details. Pretty good so far, and I tried it on to make sure it fit, which I really tried to avoid where possible because it was so cold that week in Oslo. Goof off to stay warm.
I'm so tired of it being cold.
Almost forgot the gold swirlies on the shoulder, but we got it. And although most of this top is covered and you can't really see the pattern from far away, it's comfy and I feel really cool. I'm not sure what to call this part of the costume. I just went with shawl, but it's probably the most central part of Hackclaw's inky outfit, so I spent a good chunk of time on it. I wasn't sure how to get these tiny gold dots on the fabric, but this gold leaf paint worked so much better than acrylic or spray paint.
That worked out so much better than I thought it would.
Also, if you ever see me in this muddy skinsid, it means I'm super cold because it's a heavy wool Norwegian sweater that only comes out when I'm desperate. I'm wearing like 6 layers here. The time sink here is of course these golden swirlies. Also, heat transfer vinyl is so cheap in LA, but it's just not common over here, so I had to import it and it was so expensive. I really miss how much more affordable production was in LA, where, you know, so much entertainment stuff gets made, so it's cheaper there, but at least I have free healthcare over here. The trade-offs are worth it, but my wallet hurt.
That took so much longer than I thought it would. So I'm like a day behind and I'm starting to get stress acne, panic attack acne.
I'm about 8 days in at this point, but I came back refreshed and sewed this shawl thing together and hacked together this collar that has to stay up on its own, kind of. Now, this is basically done, but how's it gonna stay on? Probably by attaching it to this chest harness, so that's next. Ouija helped me plan this out earlier, very on brand because Hackclaw also has cats. We're the same, she and I. And the plan here is to fabric wrap some 2mm EVA foam. Fortunately, I had a few different textured fabrics in black, I think from when I did that Batwoman build forever ago. There's lots of trim and straps and details that probably mostly won't show, but some of it will, and the Delta Force game designers went through the trouble of including it, so I will too. Plus, I found that everything kind of has a practical purpose, like the detachable ammo pieces and this shoulder strap for attaching the lion pauldron. Delta Force with the attention to detail. And hot diggity, this is actually shaping up pretty nicely. I've sewn the shawl part right onto the harness, so it stays in place. And it wasn't until the day of the shoot that I remembered to sew this strap down, so here I am doing that in costume. We've all been there, right? Doesn't matter, still remembered, and this whole part of the costume turned out really nice and clean and shiny. Next up is the arm guards, because how difficult could 3 rectangles be, right? Kirby helped me pattern these. She's so helpful. I mean, look at those biscuits. I got so close to finding a fabric that would work, but oh well, I have once again done the custom thing with a Cricut and ironed that on. The time sink here was this like raised trim on the design. I decided that fabric wrapping craft foam would give the right look, but it took forever, and these were supposed to be easy rectangles.
A really good reason to like not overwork, and so it's like 10:30 right now, but I cut this the wrong direction on the Cricut, so I'm gonna cut another one and then go to sleep and come back tomorrow.
So I came back refreshed the next day, but apparently too tired to film anything except this satisfying vinyl peel. But now I have a bicep guard that the lion pauldron will attach to later. I think my hands were cold, so I didn't feel like doing the tiny intricate work of adding this white barcode thing, but I did do that later in LA. I think these were the easiest part of the whole build, but yeah, it still took me a few hours. I have to leave for LA in 2 days, so it's getting crunchy. Time to get back to sewing for the face mask. I really thought I had black stretch fabric, but I don't, so leftover shawl fabric it is. I got to do more gold leaf paint splatter and added gold and silver heat transfer vinyl. I love the look, kind of wish the shawl had some silver, but it took me long enough just to do the gold. The mask also needed a black metal strip on the bridge of the nose, which I also couldn't find, but after finishing basically the entire build in LA, I harvested the bendy metal from my safety mask and glued that in. If I could do it again, I'd go with a stretch black fabric for a tighter fit, but this still worked for me. I probably didn't need to line it though, because the lining like sucked into my mouth a little bit every time I breathed in. But anyway, overall, pretty happy with it. Okay, last day in Oslo, so I'm absolutely zooming through the rest of the things I need to get done. I gotta make the hip pads for the belt. No time to finish the edges. Let's just burn seal those bad boys. I'm not even sure what this gray thing is, but I made that too with some scrap fabric and heat transfer vinyl. Also, yes, I do craft in fingerless gloves sometimes when I'm cold and fashionable. Okay, got lots of little details in here, and I think we're in pretty good shape. I did decide to make the thigh plates because they're pretty small and flat and shouldn't break in transit, because I'm going to make them out of ABS plastic. I haven't worked with ABS since building my Stormtrooper kit, but it's really easy to cut if you're working with straight lines. You can just kind of snap it off if you score the cut. Heat shaping it is a pain, but again, a little bit easier if you're working with flat planes. I super shoddily soldered the holes for the straps, but I don't think that's going to show much. The belt is also going to help hold up the thigh harness, and it's looking pretty good so far, so let's put a pin in it for now. I won't have access to a Cricut machine in LA, so I quickly cut out the patterns I made for the dagger, as well as these little kitties for the tassel charm. I can't believe I couldn't thrift or even buy beads I needed, so I painted a couple that would work. Then I ironed that cat detail to a scrap of black vinyl fabric and glued that onto the black bead. Okay, time to jam a ton of cosplay supplies into my suitcase and blast off to Los Angeles. At this point, I've spent about 98 hours working on this costume and have just like a third of it done. I'm not worried, you're worried. And I slept like the entire way on the flight. It was actually kind of nice to be like forced to have a break. And suddenly, I'm at my friend Luigi's house crafting in a t-shirt in the warm sun. Honestly, I really don't miss the sun in Norwegian winters. Like, I like the dark, but I am a big baby about the cold, so this was quite nice. I made this base for the lion pauldron and then spent an eternity at the mirror marking how to harness it on, but now we sculpt. I know this looks goofy, it's just a base to put foam clay on top of. It takes a while to dry and shrinks a bit, so you don't want much more than a shallow layer. I didn't bring any sculpting tools because I've actually not really like sculpted, so I don't have any, but I did my best with a small ruler and the end of a paintbrush. Now's probably a decent time to explain more about Delta Force. It's a free-to-play first-person shooter with a single-player and multiplayer mode. I think it's actually inspired by the movie Black Hawk Down, and you can play it on PC with console and mobile coming soon. You can play as different operators with their own unique skills. I of course recommend Hackclaw, and you can roll your gotcha luck to get her Inky skin. Hit me with some hype in the chat because this is actually turning out way better than I expected, and extra thanks to Luigi and Michael for letting me craft in their living room. That felt like more than it was. I'm at 118 hours now and still less than halfway done. Okay, now I'm spending 5 days at my dad's house, and this is where I really need to get stuff done because he has tools and an actual workspace, and I just don't have that much time left. My dad's garage is like insanely cute for content creation. Look how cute this is. It's so cute. I need to clean up the lion sculpt, mark out some of the detailed line work, and then solder those lines in. Pro tip, don't use a silver Sharpie for this because I think it's kind of like waxy and actually got in the way of my soldering iron a lot, but we are cruising through it anyway. The foam clay also kind of like crumbles away, so I use this toothbrush to help get all of those crumbs out. And now I'm adding some puff paint to create the rest of the line work. I didn't film it, but you should go over these with a heat gun after drying. That's what actually makes it puff out. Sealing and painting was easy, pretty straightforward. I weathered it off camera at a friend hangout, and later I sewed down the straps. Not to toot my own horn, but I think this looks pretty good for not being 3D printed and it being kind of an unwilling dive into sculpting. His face did turn out pretty cute though. Let's unpin those thigh plates from before, paint them silver, and start making the weapons that go with them. I did the throwing knives out of ABS plastic, and I took the time to actually shape and paint them since I needed them to shape the sheaths anyway, and you never know when a client is suddenly going to show you that those weapons actually do get used eventually and need to come out. I used that gold leaf paint for the sheaths because in person it's the perfect gold coppery color, but on camera it just looks gold, so I had to get some copper spray paint and fix that. Then I just super glued the sheaths right on the plate and we are good to go. I didn't have time to make a whole pistol and holster, so I settled for a toy gun that I sanded down and painted silver with black details. And I bought a real holster that I painted gold and then fixed with that copper spray paint. The holster actually hooks onto this elastic strap that I added, and that was actually quite sturdy, and now I can detach it for easier transport back to Norway. The toy gun is a little small, but I think it works. Okay, let's do this dagger, which I felt I needed to nail because that thing is in some cutscenes and splash art, so you know it's a central piece for sure. This is going to be an ABS plastic core with foam on each side. It's a major piece that I think I'm going to use a lot, so that's why it needs to be pretty durable in its core so that it stays pointy and sharp. I'm at about 160 hours total now and have 4 days left until the photoshoot. Hackclaw kind of just easily pulls this dagger off her thigh, so I'm going to use magnets so that it's quick for me too. That means that one of these cat faces on the hilt needs to be flatter so that the magnetic force can still reach through to the plate, and then the other side I can sculpt to be more accurately three-dimensional. Like I said, sculpting kind of scares me and I didn't want to do it again, so I did this with several layers of 2mm EVA foam that I sanded and heat cut details into. Very satisfying tiny work to end up with one cute little kitty cat and one flatter but equally cute little kitty cat. Just the hilt gets this metallic black so that I can give the blade a silver base and then add this teal blue iridescent paint on top. This is all acrylic paint, which is like plastic based, and I think because of that, along with the fact that it's slightly squishy foam, is why this next part actually worked. Iron on vinyl. What? The sheer power you feel when a complete gamble in cosplay actually pays off. I had to use low heat and peel it super carefully, but booyah! Also, this posture is why my back hurts. Then I added this top layer of vinyl even more carefully, and look at that result. I honestly can't forking believe it. Yes! Then even more little details like highlights, the silver blade edge, green gemstones, and a gloss coat, and we are done. This took me an entire day, but was probably the most satisfying part of the build, though that probably wouldn't be the case if the heat transfer vinyl hadn't worked. Can you imagine how long that would have taken me? I have dodged fate. By comparison, the pistol magazines were super easy. I also bought a holster for this and painted it, but the mags are basically just rectangles, so I did make those. I wish I could have seen more people on this trip to LA. I had it planned before getting this gig, so it was just unfortunate timing. I did manage to at least have lunches with my dad and see some friends, but I was working 12, sometimes 17-hour days, so all hangs were a little bit zombified. So I don't recommend, but I am getting it done. Can you believe I still have stuff to make? I feel like I've made so many things. All right, time to knock out these tactical wyvern type blades that Hackclaw wears on her back, which I decided to make out of wood because I thought it would be easy and quick to cut on this bandsaw. But then my dad reminded me that I broke the bandsaw the last time I came here to craft. Oops. So I guess it's kind of karmic justice that now I have to hand saw these shapes out twice, which took my puny arms forever. Here's me absolutely forgetting to film what I'm actually doing. I'm usually asked to make a YouTube video when I get these sponsorships, and filming does take a lot of time. Mistakes are inevitable. You gotta set up the equipment, set up the shot, and the hardest part is actually doing the crafting centered and in focus with a big old tripod in the way. Being a wee bit tired doesn't help, but I built a good habit of filming and usually end up with like enough that's usable. For the sheaths, I initially tried to make these out of ABS plastic, but that didn't work, so I used Warbler, which turned out to be just as sturdy. I really thought I got got regular sticky vinyl, but this is heat transfer vinyl, and that's not going to work with Worbla. So I had to go get a spray adhesive for all of this. I put these 4 brads in the bottom here, and then somehow lost the bag of the rest of them in like a pocket dimension or something. As I get more tired, these little mishaps become more frequent, but I'm still chugging along just fine, finishing the rest at Danielle and Witchy's house a little bit later. These turn out great, and their size is way more practical to actually use compared to like full-on swords or katana like Link or Deadpool use. The dang design is just repeatedly practical and impressive. The glow sticks were quick and fun. All they really needed was a black rubbery top, so I actually did the dip part of Plasti Dip for once. My cosplay technically lights up, so please clap for me. Thank you, thank you, thank you. I'm also going to finish up that tassel charm. I actually had to add gold HTV to the tassels, and I don't know why, I thought that was really funny. And I had these random white beads for the rest of the charm. I really tried to make this Chinese knot, but it was like 3 a.m. when I tried and I simply could not. So I opted for a much simpler type of Chinese knot and called it close enough, baby. Okay, the last thing I made in my dad's garage was these ammo magazines, which are clear for some reason. That reason is obviously that they look super cool, but blah. I feel like I've been talking for 9,000 years, so please enjoy these like 8 hours of work condensed into a few measly seconds. Now these can stick right on, and after adding these little straps, we are good to go. This was one of my favorite parts because it was really satisfying to pattern, and the results were super clean. We're in the home stretch now. After this, I went to Danielle and Witchy's to finish the rest of this build. I have 2 days left before my scheduled shoot with Eric, and I've worked on this costume for about 186 hours now. I ordered 4 different tactical gloves online, but it's like they don't make them for women or people with smaller hands. And I didn't really have time to make a proper pair. I was really banking on buying and modifying some, so here we are, faking it with some paints. I also have literally 0 memory of doing this gray pattern that matches the top. But anyway, I'm painting the knuckles black and we'll add some Plasti Dip for as much dimension as I have time to add. Overall, not too shabby given how they started out, huh? One of the last big tasks was painting that swirly dotted pattern on the pants as well. This did take way longer than the top because I didn't have time to unstitch the pants and sew them back together, so I had to paint, wait for it to dry, then turn it over and over to reach all the sides. I watched like an entire season of Detroiters doing this, and honestly, it doesn't show much on camera, but it looks pretty sick in person. I found the pendants for these earrings when I was in Spain and just need to paint some kind of white pattern onto them. I couldn't really see from the references I had at the time, so I just sort of guessed at the general pattern. I don't think anyone's gonna notice. As always, I left the shoes for the very end because they very rarely end up in photos or videos, so it's better to focus my time elsewhere. But I do want to spend a little bit of time making the front more accurate by taping them off and painting them. Easy peasy, lemon squeezy. My nails were actually the absolute last thing I did because I completely forgot about it, but I did already buy the nail polish, so all I had to do was paint them right before I left for the photo shoot and let them dry on the steering wheel of my car. Oh, also, I totally didn't film styling the wig because it was mostly like prayer and willpower. I absolutely hate styling wigs and didn't want to be distracted trying to film it in focus, but this is what I ended up with after a couple hours. Finally, those hours and hours and hours and hours of crafting have come to a close, and it's time to do an epic photo shoot with Eric H. Fitz. Eric is awesome, and I'm so grateful that I can trust him to get like amazing shots without having to do much myself, especially since I'm down to like 3 brain cells at this point. I'm so exhausted. To close out this collaboration, I told Delta Force that I would throw some knives in costume. I found one singular axe throwing place that would also let you throw knives. This one is called Axum Axe Throwing out in West Covina. The instructor there was really good. She made it super easy to understand what to do, and all I had to do was practice. I've got about an hour to land at least one shot, just one shot. The knife is pretty big and heavy. She said it's harder to do than the axes, and that turned out to be quite true. I missed a ton of times and wasted a bunch of Eric's memory card space, but finally got the hang of it after a little while. I had absolutely 0 chill any of the times that it hit the target because it's really exciting and makes a super satisfying sound when it hits. I actually got to where I hit it like 6 times in a row. Probably not nearly as good as Hackclaw herself, but pretty good for it being my first time, I think. I also had to talk Eric out of putting his camera below the target for the shot. He'll do anything to get a really cool shot, but I just know I would have hit the camera if he did that. But I did put my phone down there, and the shot does indeed look kind of cool. I also had to give the two-handed axe and the one-handed axe a go. They were both really easy after doing the knife. And they even had this metal playing card, which was definitely the hardest to land, but I did it a couple times and this one definitely made the coolest noise. I got a bit hot and sweaty doing this, especially since I'm wearing a face mask, but it was so fun and I felt really cool doing it in costume. So thank you, Delta Force, for giving me an excuse to finally learn how to throw some knives. In total, I've spent 12 hours planning and 212 hours crafting this Inky Reflections Hackclaw cosplay. I worked on this in Madrid, Spain, Oslo, Norway, and 3 different cities in Southern California. I spent $1,232.14 on all of the materials to make this cosplay. I spent 4 hours and $425.52 on the photo and video shoots. I've spent about 40 hours so far, but it'll probably end up being closer to like 55 hours on the edit of this video and the TikToks and Reels and the photos that Delta Force asked for. I have 595 video files documenting the crafting process for this cosplay. There's a lot of footage to go through.
You're very helpful.
But we did it! Send over some love to Delta Force and check out the game. It's free to play.
Delta Force is now on mobile. Play on Android, iOS, Steam, and Epic.
You can click the link in the caption below if you want to learn a little bit more. You can also find a link to my socials and my Patreon if you want to support what I do here. I'm gonna go sleep for an eternity now. Thank you so much for watching and stay crafty. Thank you so much to my patrons, especially my top tier patrons, Ricky Rod 33, Mike D, Andrew Leo, Grant Valentine, Robert Reyes, Turner, Nips86, Mickle, Josh M, Schottenwolf, Adam Trubiano, and Daniel Silva. Thanks so much for watching!
Does anyone else's cat insist on like laying on your arm like this? There's no way that's comfy.